All right, so I'm liking how this looks, but my file is getting to be so large that I want to start making some good decisions. So I'm going to save it here. And then I'm going to find out like where I can reduce and what things I don't need. And I also wanted to play with a technique of printing dots. So as you can see, everything is printed with these halftone dots, CMYK dots. And though you're not meant to be able to see them in the finished printing, it can be helpful to use those kind of retro effects in digital design, especially if there's elements you want to weaken a little bit. So for instance, I want to weaken some of this bright white. So I might take this white layer here of my butterfly supernova explosion, and I'm going to go up to Filter, and I'm going to go, let's go to the Filter Gallery. And I have to define the halftone pattern option. And it's taken a long time to preview it because it's such a big file. But what halftoning means is in order to get an optical gradation of white, there we go. The computer or a printing press has to thin it out into these individual dots of ink. I'm going to make its size a little bit bigger, make its contrast a little bit higher. There we go. So these halftone marks are a little bit more visible. Not just so much solid white. There we go. Then I say OK. And so what that does is that turns that whole overlay layer into something with halftone dots that are a little more distracting than I wanted them to be, because I have it on screen. So let me try inverting it. There we go. And then let me try playing with its opacity. So now you can see those dots at the edges, that halftone pattern. And that's pretty effective at kind of breaking it up, softening it. Now let's get rid of some of the other textures and you'll see what I mean. The problem with using the halftone filter is it's a pretty clunky tool. So it's great at edges, but otherwise it just kind of filled everything in. So let's see. So I wouldn't want to use it with everything else, with all of the color. Now what if I take this colorful one and I put it to a normal mode so I can see it clearly, and I select with contiguous turned off all the darks. Sorry, with contiguous turned on rather. All the darks at a really open tolerance, like 66 tolerance. And then maybe even get some of the insides. Some of these grays. All right, now I'm going to select the inverse, duplicate that onto its own layer. So it's just that stuff. And now I'm going to run that through the halftone filter. And it will give me something I can invert and use on a screen mode, like that. But then I might need to soften it with Gaussian blur because the edges are so so unclean, and that takes it out. But if I blur it, so there's lots of things you can try. This is, like I said, like being at a frame shop and playing around. But if I blur it and then I run it through that filter again, filter gallery, halftone, and invert it again, then it might be something more useful to me, especially at a lower opacity. But I'll show you my very favorite technique, which is to do a full color halftone. Let me save it there. So you can see now that the individual texture has a little bit of that retro halftone dot feel around. But there might be other parts of it I don't like. Like I don't like this kind of scratch in my initial sunburst pattern. So I can go back to that and I can grow it so that that's not showing. And I can play with how much I want this showing as a color dodge. With all these other textures, maybe I don't want it to be so light. Maybe I want to brighten it up, or so dark. Maybe I want to play with its color balance, which you can do even if it's still a vector. It will do it as what's called a smart layer. Just add a little bit of those other tones into it and see the difference that will make. I still don't know if I want to include the color or not. It's tough. That's kind of cool. So make it really subtle. Then if I want to, I can take all of these and transform them, kind of stretch them a little bit more, or even distort them, kind of place them where I think they're more helpful in the design. Being mindful of the edges, of course. So by simplifying some of this, I'm taking down a lot of the memory. It's by really refining some of these options to being ones I truly want to use. And since so much of my information, especially for the backgrounds, is outside of the poster, something I can do that will really help is just to crop down to my borders. So now I'm going to use the crop tool and just hit return, and you'll see that it goes down quite a bit, because I'm going to get rid of all these pixels that I don't need anymore on the outside. And so where it was well processing over 2 gigabytes, now the file should be more back to what it was before. So about 1.5 gigabytes. I can get rid of these layers I don't need anymore that I was referencing. I'm going to leave the black and white text in there. And I could even combine some of these. by just selecting them and hitting Command E. And the problem with that is then you have to know what mode you wanted them on. So now all combined, they're all on the same layer now. And it's all a screen. And you can see that halftone pattern very subtly at the edges, working through. And the color's just barely there. And these are the kind of ways you can affect it. And it kind of suggests clouds in a swirl. All right, in terms of all of these, one's an overlay mode, one's a color dodge, one's normal. I don't touch the vector ones, but I don't need this red one anymore, so I'm going to delete that. And then what I love about having black, white, and gray behind is I can take my base layer and I can play with its opacity, and I can see what it looks like with black coming through. I can see what it looks like with gray coming through, just slightly. So I have this at, say, 90%. And I can see what it looks like with white coming through. And if it works with all three of those in a way that I'm satisfied, then I know I've done the best I can to make this ready for printing in any method. I can take this back up to 100. All right. So this is the last technique I want to show you. This is called color separating. So I'm going to save it because this is optional, and this is to make it like a Pokemon card, where it's actually printed in this way. Maybe all aspects of it are printed in this way. What you need to do is go to the class Dropbox. Let me see if I have them already. I've made these available to you. These are macro programs that I've built within Photoshop. So you go to your class Dropbox, and the login for that, of course, is in the Canvas page. And then you look for the folder that says Actions for Digital Lab. You right-click on that, you say Download. Actions are programs written within Photoshop that you can load back into Photoshop to do certain techniques. Oh. Didn't want to crop that. Good. Okay, now, get off the crop tool, it's annoying me. All right, now I go to my Downloads folder. Huh, should be there. Don't see it. Maybe it's still downloading. Oh, okay. Someone nested this folder accidentally inside, so let me move this out, because that's going to confuse it. Okay, so now let's try that again. Go to the top Dropbox, you download this whole folder. It should be a zip file. Very good. Now it's working. Shouldn't take long because these are just computer codes. And then you go and you unzip the Actions for Digital Lab, and you see that folder, which is filled with lots of different programs. They look like that, action files, ATN files. Now we go to Actions, which you can find under Window, Actions, and you're going to click in the window options, and you're going to say Load Actions. Then you're going to go to your Downloads folder, click on that folder, select all of these, and say Open. Now they're all there. Now you have to use an action and then save it in order for it to stick. So first save your work. I already did. And now the one I'm going to use is called Carl Color Seps. And I'm going to click on CMYK Full Run. And then I'm going to hit play. And I'll talk more about actions. I don't want to merge my layers. Actually, yeah, I will.